I was 3 drinks into someone else's wedding when I made the joke I'd been making for 11 years. "Don't worry," I told Cass, watching the bride's cousin elbow somebody out of the way for the bouquet. "If we're both still single at 35, you're stuck with me. Deal's a deal." It was our oldest bit, smooth from a decade of use, the kind of thing you can say without your brain getting involved. She didn't laugh. She set down her glass, turned, and looked at me with an expression I had never once seen aimed at me in 11 years of knowing her, and said, quiet enough that it stayed at our table, "You better mean that." The DJ kept playing. Nobody else heard it, but something underneath that table had just come off its hinges, and I'd spend the rest of that night, and a good while after, working out what. My name is Will Hartley. I'm 33, and I write words for a living, product copy. Mostly the little paragraphs that try to make you want a ceiling fan, or a probiotic yogurt, or a mattress that claims to understand you. I'm good at finding the exact sentence that makes a stranger feel something about an object. It's a strange thing to be good at, and a stranger thing to be good at, while being completely unable to say the one true sentence in your own life. I lived alone, ate most dinners standing up over the sink, and told people I was happy in a tone convincing enough that I'd half convinced myself. Her name was Cass, Cassidy Vaughn, but nobody had called her Cassidy since a substitute teacher tried it once and lost. We met at 19 working concessions at a movie theater that was already dying, and the first thing she ever said to me was a bet that I couldn't eat a day-old soft pretzel without throwing up. I could. I did. It cemented something. She was sharp in a way that took people a minute to recognize as kindness, with the soft parts filed off. She wore a denim jacket so loaded with enamel pins it had its own weight class. And she laughed with her entire face or not at all, no polite middle setting, and when something really landed she'd punch your arm hard enough to leave a mark. The pact was 11 years old. We made it at 22. The same terrible weekend we both got dumped inside 36 hours of each other, sitting on the hood of her car in a gas station lot at 2 in the morning, eating the worst nachos in the state. "If we're both still single at 35, I'd said, "we just marry each other and quit trying." And to seal it, because we were idiots, I fed 2 quarters into the gumball machine by the door and proposed with a plastic ring the color of a traffic cone. She wore it for a week as a joke. I assumed she'd thrown it out years ago. I told myself the pact was a safety net. That's the lie I'd like to flag early. I told myself it was the comedy that kept the friendship safe, the thing we could joke about precisely because it could never be real. That is hiding with better branding. I'd been in love with my best friend for most of a decade, and I had built an entire bit, refined over years, specifically so I'd never have to find out what she'd say if I ever stopped joking. The wedding was our friend Deepa's, in a barn somebody had spent a fortune making look like it hadn't cost a fortune. String lights, mason jars, the warm smell of cut grass and someone else's open bar drifting through the big doors. Cass and I were seated together, because we were always seated together. We were the reliable +1 for each other, the 2 people every host could pair off without consequence. The safe table, the ones who'd never make it weird. It was Deepa's aunt who started it, leaning across the table with the fearless nosiness of a woman who survived 4 decades of marriage and earned the right to it. "And you two." She waved a forkful of cake between us like a wand. "When is it your turn?" And I did the thing. The reflex. I draped my arm over the back of Cass's chair and ran the bit, 11 years old, if we're both single at 35, she stuck with me. Deal's a deal, and waited for the laugh that always came. It didn't come. The aunt, sensing weather, found somewhere else to be. And Cass turned and looked at me with no joke anywhere on her face, and said the thing, soft, just for our table. Then she stood, smoothed her dress, and went to dance with Deepa's grandmother like nothing at all had happened, leaving me holding a sentence I had no idea how to put down. We didn't talk about it. We danced badly with other people. We ate too much cake. And on the drive home, I always drove. She always controlled the music. She was quiet in a way she never was, watching the highway lights slide across the dashboard, her boots up on the seat the way I'd told her 100 times not to. At her building, she didn't get out right away. She sat there with her hand on the door handle, not looking at me, and said, "I'm tired of pretending the joke is a joke, Will." And then she was up the steps and gone before I could find a single one of the thousands of words I get paid to find. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark running her sentence through every filter I own. And I own a lot of filters. It's my whole job to know what words are doing. You better mean that. I told myself she was tired. I told myself weddings make everyone briefly believe in things. The open bar, the string lights, Deepa glowing in white, the simple cruel math of being 33 at a table for two. I told myself that in the morning we'd both pretend it never happened, because that was the thing we were best at, pretending expertly for over a decade. I opened a text to her and wrote "Hey" about last night. Deleted it. Wrote "So that was." Deleted that. Wrote, "And I'm not proud of this. Lowell, you scared me. Almost thought you were serious, and held my thumb over the arrow for a long time. Because sending it would put the joke back in its box and lock it, and we could keep the safe table forever." I deleted that too. For the first time in my professional life, I had no sentence. The man who could make you want a yogurt could not find 4 words for the most important person he knew. I set the phone face down and let the truth get a little closer than I usually allow. What I did instead of texting was show up. That was always our real language anyway, not words, presence. I went over that Sunday like I did most Sundays, with bad coffee and a reason that wasn't really a reason, and we moved around her kitchen in the choreography of 11 years. Me on the stool, her at the stove, the radio doing its thing. Everything was almost normal. Almost. There was a half-second too much care in all of it. Both of us handling the morning like a glass we'd already cracked once. Then she reached up for the good mugs on the high shelf. Her collar shifted, and I saw the chain. I'd never noticed it because I'd never been looking. A thin silver chain, and threaded onto it, worn smooth at the edges. An orange plastic ring the color of a traffic cone. She'd kept it. 11 years. Through every move, every breakup, every box marked donate. The 50-cent gag ring I was certain she'd thrown out the same week. She caught me looking, and her hand went to her collar too fast, tucking it under her shirt, and she turned back to the stove and said something about the coffee in a voice that had dropped just a little. I am, by training, a person who notices what things are made of. It had taken me 11 years to notice what that was. My one marketable skill is reading subtext, and I had apparently been illiterate in the only language that mattered, in my own best friend's kitchen, for over a decade. That is not the flattering version. It is the accurate one. After that, the evidence was everywhere. It always is, once you finally start counting. Deepa called me Tuesday, just to check in, which Deepa has never once done in her life, and somewhere in the small talk let slip, you know she's turned down everyone since spring. Right? Marcus asked. That guy from her gym asked. She just keeps, and then caught herself and pivoted so hard I heard the tires squeal. There was the fact that her phone was always full because she'd never deleted a single voicemail I'd left her, which she always blamed on me. And there was the thing I suddenly remembered, that she left every relationship she'd ever been in at roughly the 8-month mark with the same flat verdict. He was fine. He just wasn't. And she never finished it, and I never asked her to, because some part of me had never wanted to hear the end of that sentence. Not because I didn't care, because I was afraid the end of it was a word with my name in it. There was one more thing, and it was the one that actually broke me. That Sunday in her kitchen, while she was rinsing the pan, I glanced at the corkboard by her fridge, the one I'd looked past 1,000 times, and pinned in the corner, half hidden under a takeout menu, was a ticket stub. Our movie theater. The one that closed in 2014. She'd kept a ticket stub from the worst minimum wage job either of us ever had, for over a decade, because it was where we met. I looked at that little square of faded cardboard and felt the floor of 11 years tilt under me. I write copy about objects for a living. I know exactly what it means when a person keeps something useless. It means it isn't the object they're keeping. I had been surrounded by her evidence the entire time. The ring, the voicemails, the ticket stub, the unfinished sentence at the end of every relationship, and I'd read none of it, because reading it would have required me to do something about it. My professional specialty is noticing what people can't say. My personal specialty, it turns out, was refusing to. It came to a head on a Thursday, which is the least romantic day of the week, which is exactly the kind of thing that happens in real life. She came over to watch the bad show we watched, the one neither of us actually liked, but both kept up with out of pure spite. We sat on my couch the way we'd sat on my couch 1,000 times, her feet in my lap, a bowl of something between us. But the episode ended, and neither of us reached to start the next one. The apartment went very quiet. Outside, it had started to rain, the soft spring kind that makes a room feel smaller and safer. And I became aware of the weight of her feet against my legs in a way I had spent years training myself not to be aware of. She wasn't watching the screen. She was watching the window, the rain coming down through the streetlight, and I was watching her watch it. And the chain was out again, the orange ring resting against her collarbone where she'd stopped bothering to hide it. Neither of us said anything for a long time. The rain filled the silence, the way rain does. I could feel my own pulse in my throat, and I thought about how many of the best nights of my entire life had looked exactly like this. Nothing happening, her feet in my lap. The two of us pretending this was an ordinary friendship and not the quiet center of everything I had. She reached down without looking and threaded her fingers through mine on top of the blanket. Just held my hand. We had hugged 1,000 times, shoved each other, fallen asleep on the same couch, but we had never once simply held hands, on purpose, in silence, and we both understood the difference, and neither of us let go. I lied, she said finally, to the window. At Deepa's. When I said I was tired of pretending the joke is a joke. A breath. I never thought it was a joke. Not once. Not in 11 years. She turned and looked at me, and there was no armor on her face at all, something I'd seen maybe twice in all the time I'd known her, and never once aimed my way. I made the pact at 22 because it was the only way I could think of to tell you I wanted to marry you without risking anything, she said. If you laughed, it was a joke. If you didn't, she shrugged, and her eyes had gone too bright. You always laughed, Will. For 11 years you always laughed. And then last weekend you put your arm around my chair and said it again like it cost you nothing, and I just couldn't do the laugh anymore. I'm 33. I'm too old to wear a 50-cent ring around my neck and keep calling it ironic. Everything in me went still. Not the dramatic kind of still, the other kind, where your whole body finally stops doing the thing it's been doing so long you'd forgotten it took effort, like setting down a bag you've carried until your hand went numb around the handle. My chest did something it had refused to do for a decade. I looked down at our hands on the blanket because I wasn't sure I could look at her face and survive it. Cass, my voice came out wrong. I made myself slow down. You don't have to do this. We can blame the wedding and the rain and too many years of bad timing. I can get up, start the next episode, and we never say another word. And you keep your best friend. I made myself say the last part, because it was the part that counted. If this is going to cost me you, don't. I'd rather have 40 more years of you across this couch than gamble it on one night. So if you want the door, it's right there. I'll hold it open and I swear I won't be hurt. I gave her the door. I meant it. That was the part that mattered. She didn't take it. She tightened her fingers around mine, once, hard, the exact way she'd been punching my arm for 11 years, and she said, "I don't want the door, you idiot. I've never wanted the door. I want the dumb plastic ring to mean something." So I told her the true thing, and I didn't reach for "I love you," because that sentence was too small and too worn out, and I write for a living, and I wanted to get this one exactly right. "You're the only person I've ever stopped performing around," I said. "Everybody else gets the version of me that's selling something. You got the day-old pretzel at 19, and you've had the real one ever since. And I built a whole joke to make sure I'd never have to find out whether you wanted it. The pact was never a backup plan, Cass. It was the only honest thing I ever managed to say to you, and I had to disguise it as a joke just to get it out of my mouth." I finally looked at her. I meant it, at 22, and every year since. "So you better mean it, too." She laughed, the whole face kind, the only kind she's got, and it broke halfway into something wetter, and she leaned across the bowl of whatever it was, and I lifted my hand to the side of her face slowly, giving her every inch to pull back, and she didn't pull back. We kissed for the first time in 14 years of knowing each other, careful and unhurried. Like neither of us quite believed the other one was finally allowed. And then, because the universe has a sense of comedy, my phone lit up on the arm of the couch, and we both flinched. It was a group text from Deepa, to both of us at once. "Okay, it's been a week. Did you two figure it out yet? Or do I have to lock you in the barn?" Cass read it over my shoulder and started laughing so hard she had to put her forehead against my chest, and I sat there with my best friend shaking with laughter against me, and the rain coming down, and that orange plastic ring pressed somewhere between us. And I finally understood that the whole table, all of them, for years, had just been waiting on the two of us to catch up. 3 months later, she moved the denim jacket into my closet one pin at a time, so gradually I didn't notice it had happened until the morning I reached for a coat and found her whole loud life hanging next to my quiet one. We did everything backwards and out of order, the way we'd done everything since 19. We'd been best friends for 14 years, and somehow being more than that felt less like a change than an admission. What surprised me was how little the surface of us changed, and how completely the floor underneath it did. She still stole food off my plate without asking, and still defended it as a public service. I still overread her silences, then got the smug little correction note, though now the notes ended with things they'd never ended with before. We still watched the bad show out of spite. She still punched my arm when something landed. Except now, sometimes, the hand stayed. The 11 years of friendship hadn't been the thing we were giving up to be together. The 11 years were the foundation. We'd just finally agreed to live in the house we'd already built. A year after that, while she was asleep, I took the orange ring off its chain and had a jeweler set it. The actual 50-cent gumball ring, traffic cone plastic and all, inside a small glass dome on a real band, because she'd told me that if I ever replaced it, she would never forgive me. I proposed for real in the same gas station lot, on the hood, of a different car, with the worst nachos in the state going cold on the dashboard between us. She said yes before I finished. Too fast. Like the answer had been sitting behind her teeth for 11 years, waiting for me to quit joking long enough to ask. Years later, when people ask how we got together, she tells them I proposed twice and meant it both times. I tell them the truer thing, which is that I'd been proposing for over a decade and simply hadn't had the nerve to drop the punchline. But the version I keep for myself is the one on the couch in the rain, her feet in my lap, the orange ring out against her collar. The moment she said I lied, the night the longest joke of my life finally stopped being funny and turned out to be the only honest thing I'd ever said. It wasn't sudden. It had probably always been her. I'd just needed 11 years and a stranger's wedding to stop laughing long enough to admit it. So tell me, what would you have done if your best friend looked at you across a wedding table and said, "You better mean that"? Would you have made the joke one more time, or would you have finally let it be true? And have you ever loved someone so quietly, for so long, that you hid it inside a joke just to keep them close? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every one. If this one landed somewhere tender, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.